the whole issue of the Holy Spirit really made an impact on me, and I was starting to ask questions. It had been a long time, for years, probably 20 plus years of asking questions about the empowerment of the Holy Spirit and the ministry of the Holy Spirit and the purpose of the Holy Spirit. And I had been through devastating, heartbreaking separation from my uncle, spiritual father, and the people at the church. And it was just God pretty much just tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You got to get out of here, or else you'll lose your mind." And I had this hunger after this experience to know more of God. I wanted to hear His voice. I always did, but it really got intense. And so what happened is God put us in a business that allowed me to travel up and down the East Coast. And we were doing pretty good in the Northeast, tough competition, but God was opening up doors in New York State, and I went up there a few times. But on a trip up there, going along the Route 17, real pretty part of New York State, the Lord gave me the word land. Land. Look for land. And I was looking there at beautiful land, and I thought, well, I got it. So it was during this time that I was really talking to God a lot in my truck. I had a nice Ford F-350 dually, and I would drive all over doing this work. But it was really God's way of talking to me by just communing with me in my truck. The Spirit of God was evidently there teaching me as I was sorting out some scriptures that were starting to eat away at me. Well, with this land idea, I started thinking about the Northeast, and I had distributors that were selling the product that I was in the state of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. And I wasn't real interested in the New England area. It was too cold. I've always wanted to go to a warmer climate. I had lived, Sharon and I, in Texas for 3 years in the 90s, and liked the South. And earlier in my life, I wanted to move to North Carolina, so I started to try to sell a project in North Carolina. I tried and tried. I had some good opportunities to get some big, six-figure type sales, and they fell through. Well, I landed on a project where the fire chief was giving me the time of day and listening to me speak about our product versus the product that he had already seen and believed that he was going to buy. And God gave me favor with this man and his fire department, his two underlings that he had put in charge of helping him purchase this product. I sold a clean air diesel exhaust removal system. King gave me the time of day, which meant that I was going to potentially find my first sale in North Carolina. Well, normally you have to go to the fire department, do a big dog and pony show, PowerPoint, whatever, get a bunch of references gathered up, and just work like crazy to try to sell the project. Well, it wasn't hard. And I sold this project over the phone, good-sized project, and it was a project that I could do. It wasn't, too hard for me to do it pretty much by myself. And I had a helper at the time, and we've been doing a lot of work in Jersey and New York State, so he had learned a little bit. And in January of '05, my wife and I headed out. Well, she didn't want to go. Normally she would be excited. And I said, let's pack the kids. We were homeschooling them. Let's just go to North Carolina. Maybe there's something for us down there. Well, she started getting a panic attack. She was scared to ride in a car, she didn't want to drive that far, and that wasn't like her. It's definitely a spiritual attack. And so I had some friends of mine pray for my wife, and she got over that fear and was able to pack her car, and then I took my truck with the trailer, and we headed off to King, North Carolina. And right away after we crossed over the Blue Ridge Mountains and headed down, we saw the valley and all the little foothills to the left, and we saw just gorgeous land. and I think this has probably hit many other people that decided to move to this side of the Blue Ridge, is just this beauty and this feeling. And I imagine the early settlers that came down the valley, connected to the Appalachians, probably had a similar feeling. And we just got that feeling like, well, maybe we're going to live here. And so we saw some names of towns on Highway 52 South all the way to Winston. That's where we were going to stay. And one of the names of the town was Pinnacle. And I said, maybe we'll live in Pinnacle. And I said that to Sharon, and she was like, I don't think we're going to live in Pinnacle. So we got checked into the hotel, and the next day we headed to the job site, me and my helper. And that was King, and that was north about 15 minutes of Winston. And on the very first day in the morning, I'm looking at a county map of their area in King that they cover, and it's Stokes County. And a fireman came up to me, and as he was walking up to me, I glanced down, and on the little, kind of like an end table below the map, was a little New Testament. And he said, "What are you looking at?" And his name was Scott Haithcock, and he's not with that fire department anymore, but he just came over to me, and he just kind of looked at me with this look in his eye, like, "You're looking for something, aren't you?" And sure enough, he said to me, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "Well, I'm looking for land, possibly, and it looks like you got a beautiful land around here." And he goes, "Well, I live in Pilot Mountain. Maybe you ought to consider that." And he went out of his way to give me a phone number and call a real estate guy, which happened to be his neighbor, to tell me about a property. And I told him I needed or wanted at least 10 acres. And this guy, Sam Carson, came by, or I called him, and we connected up at a property a couple days later. And the thing that made me realize that God was involved in the sale was, while he was talking to me, I glanced down at this end table, and a New Testament was sitting there, and I asked him the question. I said, "Scott, are you guys Christians here? Do you know God or whatever?" And they go, "Yeah, we're Christians." I said, "Well, maybe that's why I got this deal, because it seems like I'm being blocked from getting any other deal in North Carolina." And sure enough, there was a handful of Christians, believers, in the administration of the fire department. So God gave us favor with his people. Well, a couple days later, we went to look at the property, looked at it myself, got excited, told Sharon. Sharon looked at it, and the house was like a 3-bedroom. She said, "No way, it's too small." So that didn't work out. As everybody knows, wife buys the house. And so she took the whole thing over, which was good, because I had to do a project, and it usually takes me a week. And this was an 8-bay system, and it was usually like a day a system. And I was thinking about houses and land, and I wasn't really working as diligently or as quickly as I normally do. And so I had to get back to work, get the project done. And Sharon went on the internet, and her criteria was Pilot Mountain, 10 acres, house that was 4-bedroom or more, because we had 5 children. And she found 2 properties that fit the criteria. And the first one we went to is where I sit today. It is 212 Foothill Farm Lane in Pilot Mountain. And as soon as we drove up, there was a feeling that came over my spirit. And then as we drove up around this little horseshoe around the front of the house, a smile spread across my face. Kids jumped out of the car. They ran around. Sharon obviously wanted to see if the house was big enough. But I went down to the area that we've been working on this summer to clear out and put either a pond, or in some areas we're going to put some cabins, our retreat center.